Ever since I had that nightmare, I kept a close eye on both of my parents. If they were monsters, however, they didn't show it. Every mannerism, everything my parents knew, they knew. They went to work, came home, played with me, we had dinner together, and they read me stories before we went to bed. Perhaps that nightmare really was just that, a simple nightmare. Weeks had gone by, and everything seemed normal, including not having nightmares. Because nothing was out of the ordinary, I soon forgot about the nightmare I had that day, and things went on peacefully. As my life continues on this peaceful way, and the great famine subsides, I soon forget about tales of monsters. This is also due to the part of me growing up. I wasn't a scared little fool anymore, and I knew better than to believe in monsters and the like. They were make-believe, and I was starting to learn that the real world was far more scary than things that don't exist. When I was at school, I learned all about the plague, Great War, and famine. My teacher said that while these things happened just in recent decades, it was important to look back at them, remembering and learning from them. We learned of all the new advancements made thanks to the tragedies, but we also learned about the horrible lengths some ponies would go to for their selfishness and greed. These subjects interested me more than any others, for some reason. I was drawn to learn all I could about them. I was born towards the end of the famine, so most of my memories of it were from when I was a foal. Because, of course, I couldn't remember much about it. Perhaps this was the reason I was so intrigued with the three tragedies. Or perhaps I simply liked learning about the past. Whatever the reason, I studied these subjects as often as I could. But my studies only lasted a few years. The Magical Symposium Council had decreed new land grants to families willing to move back into newly reclaimed lands. While this land wouldn't be useful right away, within years it would be rich in nutrients and would yield high harvests. My parents, seeing an opportunity, decided to take the council up on this, and we started packing our belongings, heading to a new town. This news seemed to come out of the blue. It wasn't unheard of for families in town that were living to take this offer. Many had already done so. But my parents always seemed so disinterested in it, that I was caught off guard by the news. Whatever it was that changed their minds must have been huge, because we packed up within a day and were on our way to our new home. It was a town that I'd never heard of, called Vanatonim. It took a few days of travel, but we finally arrived at the outskirts of our new town, Vanatonim. Looking down at it from the hill we are on, there only appears to be 4 buildings aside from a mountain, and each building has a large amount of farmland next to it. As we get closer, however, I noticed that between the buildings there is a well-lit cavern in the mountain, that the road we are on continues through. It wasn't long before we were moving through the cavern, and after a few minutes or so, we came to a large open area inside the mountain. It was like someone hollowed out the mountain, and in places, holes opened up in the top. Many of these holes had vines crawling out of them, but they still had plenty of sunlight from the outside. I continued to look around the cavern I was now in, taking in the grassy hills, cobbled streets, and wooden buildings. It was a whole town hidden beneath the mountain, smaller than my previous town, but still probably had a population of a few thousand. I was speechless at the beauty of the town and the disbelief I had for its existence. I was in such awe of the town that I didn't notice that we had arrived at our new house. It was a bit smaller than our old one, but it looked decent. I snapped out of my state of awe and began to help my mother and father unload our belongings into our new house. I soon realized it was quite similar to our old house in terms of layout. You enter into the kitchen, which has 3 doors that lead into 2 bedrooms and an extra room for storage, or anything else we'd want it to be. We spend the rest of the day unpacking, and don't get a chance to take a look around at the town. Even though I was begging Mother and Father again and again to take a break and take a look, they said we would all take a good look around tomorrow. So when I finally crawled into my bed, I was anxious to fall asleep right away. I think of all the things that I will see tomorrow, and I cannot wait to ask someone how the town was built. My mind continues to run at full speed until it runs into a brick wall. A memory that I had forgotten about for years. It crawled into my mind slowly, but when it finally appeared, it just wouldn't go away. It was the memory of that night, long ago, when those things had attacked my parents. The nightmare I had had as a foal. I don't know why I had suddenly remembered this, but I wasn't a fool anymore. Monsters didn't exist, and that was just a nightmare, nothing more. However, I couldn't take my mind from it, as it kept replaying over and over in my head. Why was I remembering this now? I continued to think about this question and about the nightmare until my mind slowly stops working and I drift off into sleep.